Welcome to episode 2 of the Dialogues on Dharmashastra series. As in episode 1, we once again have Nithin Shridhar, Chief Curator, Advaita Academy, as our guest and subject matter expert on this topic. In episode 1, we addressed two broad themes, the purpose of the Dharmashastras and their relevance in the current context, as well as the question of whether there is a need to revise them to make them more contextual and relevant to the times we live in. That particular episode is already available on YouTube. Please watch, and also don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. In this episode, which is episode 2 of the Dialogues in Dharmashastra, we take up the definition of Dharma and what are the valid sources of knowing and understanding Dharma. As a preamble, I would like to say that it is often fashionable to equate Dharma with the Western constructs of morality and ethics. However, the problem with this attempt is the fact that Western concepts of morality and ethics are rigid and often devoid of context and purely objective, whereas Dharma is contextual, allows for a certain level of subjectivity, and is flexible within the larger boundary conditions that define it. It is in this context that I would like Nithin to address the definition of Dharma, and then we'll go to the next stage where we'll talk about the valid sources of getting to know Dharma. Yeah.
Thank you, Ramesh. I'm happy to be here again and share whatever little I know. I would not call myself an expert, definitely, but I'm a seeker of Dharmashastra. I'm a student of Dharmashastra, and I think it is my life calling to study, understand, unravel, and share whatever little I learn with the people about Dharma and Dharmashastra at a time when Dharmashastra has become kind of excluded from everything, something which is completely abused, demonized, and everything. But I have a simple thing that people nowadays often speak about Dharma, dharmic way of life. This action is dharmic. This view is dharmic view of this, dharmic view of that. But how? But when it is asked what is the basis of their designating something as Dharma, the answer, there is no answer from them, because they are not tackling the very basic question: how do we know Dharma? How do we know what is Dharma and what is Adharma? What is the definition of Dharma and what are the sources of knowing Dharma? I think in today's session we will be dealing with the definition of Dharma, because there is a lot of different aspects to that, though it appears to be very simple thing. What is the definition of Dharma? So, as you rightly said, Dharma has been can be interpreted, if we have to use English terms, it is very difficult. There is no single term. Dharma has an aspect of ethics, it has an aspect of morality, but it is not just that. It has an aspect of law, it has an aspect of justice, but it is not just that. It has an aspect of duty, righteousness, and so many other things. Depending upon the context of its usage. Therefore, to properly understand Dharma, you have to understand the terminologies and the conceptual frameworks of the Hindu text, of the Dharmashastra text, in which the Dharma is envisaged. So, in the context of an individual, to just put it in a very simple terms, Dharma refers to performing one's duties and ethical actions. See, I am using the two terms here, not just ethical actions, but also the duties. And this takes on different forms in different contexts. In the context of a society, Dharma refers to social harmony, morality, progress, and everything else, sustainability, etc. In the context of governance, Dharma refers to law, justice, fairness, and so many other things. In the cosmic context, I think this is perhaps the most easiest one to understand. Dharma refers to cosmic order, balance, Rita. But let us understand, as I said, Dharma from a dharmic perspective. From the perspective it is defined, from the conceptual framework it is defined. The first is the obvious etymological meaning of Dharma. Dharma can be understood as that which upholds, sustains, nurtures, or stabilizes. Dhru dharayati. Dharayati iti dharma. Dhru dharayati means to bear, to support. The word dharma, it has been derived from the root dhru, which means to bear, to support, and by extension to nurture, to stabilize, so many other meanings. So the question is, if dharma is something which supports, then what does dharma uphold and sustain? What is it supporting? What is it upholding? So the answers we find in various texts spread across the Hindu textual landscape. For example, Bhagavan Krishna in Mahabharata, not in Bhagavad Gita, I'm giving you definition from Mahabharata, Karna Parva, says, Dharana dharma iti yahu, dharmo dharayati praja. Dharma is that which upholds all beings. That which upholds is dharma, is called as dharma, and dharma upholds all beings. Praja is the word used. Praja is all beings. Praja also means citizens. So it is Ishvara who is the creator, the sustainer, and the destroyer of the universe, who upholds all beings. So Ishvara is Dharma Swarupa itself, and he upholds all beings. Similarly, we have another definition. This time it is from Shruti, the Mahanarayana Upanishad, which is a very long definition. It says, Dharmo Vishwasya Jagataha Pratishtha, Loke Dharmishta Praja, Upasarpanti, Dharmena Papa Anudati, Dharme Sarvam Pratishtitam, Tasma Dharmam Paramam Vadanti. Paramam Vadanti, Dharma is said to be Paramam, the highest. Why? Because Dharma Vishwasya Jagataha Pratishtha. Dharma is the support of whole cosmos. It is in which the whole cosmos is established, and all people draw near to a person who is fully devoted to Dharma. Like we can say that all the acharyas and gurus are spiritual beings. Whoever you take, for example, Ramakrishna, Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, or their followers, we all go near such acharyas because they are rooted in Dharma. Through Dharma, then this is very important. Dharmena papam anudati. Through Dharma, one removes all papam, all karmic demerits, all sins, you can say, but sin has a lot of Abrahamic baggage. So everything is established in Dharma, hence Dharma is highest. So you can see so many similar definitions which basically highlight one thing again and again, that Dharma is that which upholds everything. Dharma upholds the universe, Dharma upholds all beings, etc. So in all beings, of course, humans also come. And we as a human being, that is what matters. So what is Dharma means in our context. What does sustaining human beings, sustaining an individual, sustaining a human society mean in our context? So this definition, we find it in Vaisheshika Sutra, which says, Yato abhyudaya nishresa siddhi sa dharma. Very straightforward, very short definition. Dharma is that from which results the accomplishment of abhyudaya and nishresa. See that there are two words here, abhyudaya and nishresa. Abhyudaya is material happiness, this worldly happiness, but it is not just about artha and kama in this world. It also includes varga, that what happens, what we achieve after this world. It is both ihaloka and paraloka. Ihaloka means this world, that is artha and kama that we achieve in this world, the happiness we achieve in this world, and paraloka, swarga, etc. And nishrayasa means supreme good, that is moksha. So dharma is that which helps us to attain happiness in this world, in the next world, as well as takes us slowly towards the highest goal of moksha, which is the freedom from the, very simply put, this is freedom from the cycle of birth, death, the bondage. Parashara, in the Parashara Smriti's commentary, the Swami Vidyaranya has written a wonderful commentary on Parashara Smriti called as Parashara Madhava. So in that, in the Achara Kanda, Madhavacharya, that is Vidyaranya, says Dharma is called hitam. The hitam is the word used in Parashara Smriti itself. Parashara uses the term the hitam. He says Dharma is hitam. What is hitam? Explains Vidyaranyaji very well. He says Dharma is called hitam. Hitam means beneficial. It is called beneficial as it is the means to attain our desired fruits. It is the correct means to attain our desired fruits. And such desired fruits are twofold. Aihika, that is this worldly. Amushmika, the other worldly, that I already said. And these other worldly fruits are also two types. Abhyudaya, attainment of sukha and happiness and swarga and or heaven. And nishreyasa, that is supreme knowledge resulting in moksha or liberation. Therefore, dharma is the direct means of abhyudaya, and dharma, by producing tattva jnana, that is atma jnana, is also the cause of moksha or nishreyasa. So it directly causes abhyudaya and indirectly causes nishreyasa. See, this is a very, very important definition because there are so many things. He's saying that dharma is the means to attain all our desired fruits. Now, just to clarify with a simple example. I want to become rich. I can either work hard in an honest way and earn and become rich through business or whatever it is in an honest way. Or I can loot a temple, loot an idol, loot a bank and become rich. The second way, you will be a criminal. You will eventually be caught up by the law. You will be thrown into jail. You will face sorrow. And even if you don't get caught up by law, you will be caught up by karma. If not in this life, it is in next life. And you will face sorrow. So that is not the direct means. That is not the correct means to attain artha or kama, whatever it is. Dharma is the right way. Because dharma leads to sukha without any dukkha, without any these consequences of performing papam. Because dharma leads to punya, karmic merit. So that is what highlighted by Swami Vidyaranya. So in short, we can say that dharma is the means for both material and spiritual well-being. That is overall well-being of a person. So when we speak about dharma, when we define what is dharma, you have to always keep in mind it is not just simply ethics that, oh, we have to live an ethical life. It's not just simply that. It is that. But also the element is there that living a dharmic life is the means to earn punyam. And this punyam, dharmic, karmic merit, is what gives us sukha, swarga, and chitta shuddhi. And the opposite, which is adharma, leads to gives rise to papam or karmic demerit, which results in dukkha, naraka, and more bondage to samsara. Chitta ashuddhi, that is more and more bondage to arishatvarga, that is kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, etc. This whole definition has to be sit into our mind. Only then we will make sense of dharma. Otherwise, what nowadays people is, no, this is beneficial to me because I am earning money now. I don't care of the means. But every one of us care about sukha, happiness. Every one of us want to have happiness. And only way to have happiness is dharma. That is the absolute way to have happiness. Now, I want to take a few more very quick definitions of dharma, which covers few more aspects. I hope it's okay.
I think the idea is to make it as clear as possible what dharma constitutes. Unless people know the landscape, they're not going to be clear about things. So,
So, Adi Shankaracharya, in his Gita Bhashya, in his introduction to Gita Bhashya, he makes a very important observation. He says, I won't read the Sanskrit text because it's a bit long. I'll just read the translation. He says, the Bhagavan created the universe, and after creating the universe, wishing to secure order and stability of the universe, he created the Prajapatis, such as Marichi, etc. Prajapatis are the lord of the beings, who looks after the beings, who maintains order, etc. And cause the Prajapatis to adopt the pravritti dharma, the dharma of action or pravritti, as enunciated in Veda. And then he created others such as Sanaka and Sanandana, etc., the four rishis, and caused them to adopt the dharma of nivritti or renunciation, which is marked by jnanam, that is knowledge, and vairagyam, dispassion. Thus, the dharma as enunciated in the Veda are two kinds: pravritti dharma and nivritti dharma. The dharma of action, the path of action, the path of worldly action, and the path of worldly renunciation, the path of sannyas. And through this, Shankaracharya says, Bhagavan sustains and maintains order and stability in the universe. The twofold dharma, which is the direct means to abhyudaya, we already heard this word, abhyudaya, happiness, and nishreyasa, which is liberation, of all beings, have been practiced by people belonging to all varnas and ashramas, all those who sought welfare. See so many power-packed messages. First, he says, dharma is of two kinds with respect to humans: nivritti dharma, pravritti dharma. Pravritti dharma is about dharma being engaged in this world. Nivritti dharma is dharma on the path that which takes us to moksha. Right? That is why it gives abhyudaya and nishreyasa. Pravritti dharma gives abhyudaya, nivritti dharma gives nishreyasa. In the Ishavasya Upanishad, the very first verse speaks about nivritti dharma. Ishavasyam idam sarvam yatkincha dagasatam jagat tena tektena bunjitam magradha kasyasya janam. Tena tektena. Leave the world, renounce the world and enjoy the self. But in the second verse, kurvanna eva he karmani jiji vishesh shatam samaha. If you want to live, if you wish to live 100 years, you have to do your karma. That is, do your pravritti dharma. And then he says, people of all varnas and ashramas, that is everyone, for every human beings who want welfare, they will practice this pravritti dharma and nivritti dharma as applicable to them. It is not that this dharma is for only some group of people or other group of people. The way the dharma is practiced would be different for different group of people. But the essential mechanism, the essential structure of dharma will be same. And the fruit will be the same. You practice pravritti dharma, whatever varna you are, whatever ashrama you are, or you may be outside of the varnashrama dharma, you may be to varna bahya. But if you practice pravritti dharma, the worldly dharma in a very larger sense, then it means it will take you towards artha and kama and ihaloka, paraloka. And if you practice the nivritti dharma in whatever sense, it may be through bhakti, it may be through Vedantic renunciation or whatever path, it will take you closer to moksha. So he brings up about this notion of nivritti dharma and pravritti dharma very clear. Then we have a definition on dharma in Manu Dharmashastra and Manusmriti, which is also an interesting, important definition. He says in the first chapter, 22nd verse, Karmanam cha vivekartham dharma adharma vyavechayat dvandve rayo jayat chaimaha sukhadukkadibihi prajaha. For the due discrimination of actions, that is to discriminate or to differentiate between different kinds of action. When we speak of karma, karma is a neutral. All actions is karma, but not all actions are same because they give rise to different kinds of fruits. Therefore, to differentiate between different groups of actions, Bhagavan or Brahma divided the actions into two groups: dharmic action, dharma; adharmic actions, adharma. And he connected by doing so, he connected the people, that is, people who are performing these actions, with pairs of opposites as the fruits, that is sorrow and happiness, sukha, dukkha, adivihi, he says, etc. That is sukha, dukkha, swarga, naraka, attachment, hatred. So all these different kinds of fruits. Therefore, dharma is the connecting link. Dharma is basically, dharma, adharma is the designator of the actions which tells us about what kind of action it is, whether it generates karmic merit or whether it generates karmic demerit, and whether it what kind of results it leads to. Sukha, dukkha, swarga, naraka. I already mentioned that before also. But it's not that I have made up this definition. This is in the Shastras. And as I said in the last time, it is through Shastras alone we can know what is Dharma. I or you cannot make up. Actions do not come and say, for example, the action of murdering someone, or stealing something. They do not come and say that, look, I am adharma, please perform. Similarly, putting hard work to achieve something, it does not come. For example, doing charity or dhanam, it does not come and say, look, I am good action, I am dharmic action, please do me. It does not say.
I think the issue is that most people think that Hinduism does not have any rules, regulations. Or the problem is that they do not follow any rules. They do not follow any traditions, anything. But when they will say that the Hinduism, anything goes. Like, I can be spiritual but not religious. But any sampradaya that you take up, any practice that you take up, there are clear rules, regulations, steps that you need to take. But people are choosing not to take those steps, or for whatever reason, and then they are saying that Hinduism, there are no procedures, processes, or anything is not there. But which is completely untrue. Actually.
This is the unfortunate reality, because this is the result of at least 50 years of the kind of environment people have grown up into, thinking that Hinduism means simply a name to write in our examination forms or whatever government application forms. And it is simply the name for whatever a little bit of festivals or anything that we follow at home, or we may not follow at home. There is nothing other than that. People have been completely unexposed to the Shastric idea of Hinduism. Nowadays, when I speak about Shastras, the first argument is that do not reduce us to an Abrahamic religion. They're not understanding the very fact that just because Abrahamic religions believe in certain book or certain text, does not mean that we should not believe in those books only because the Abrahamics believe. Defining ourselves does not mean that necessarily defining ourselves in opposition to whatever the Abrahamic stands. We need to understand this is also kind of Abrahamization of Hinduism, because by defining ourselves as a antithesis of Christianity or Islam, we are actually doing injustice to Hindu Dharma. The Dharma which has come to us for thousands of years, for which our ancestors gave their lives, for which which have been articulated by our Arshaya Rishis, which have been carefully conserved by so many people and transmitted by so many people with so much hard work. All that knowledge, we are simply throwing it away, right?
Yeah, there's a very interesting. There is a very interesting article that that was recently sent to me. It is published by Harvard, the business school, and it says the value of rituals in offices and organizations. And it says that certain rituals, certain practices that when you keep repeating, it could be as simple as doing a particular thing before you start a meeting, or a group prayer before you get into before you start your work, or something like that. Is crucial to build organizational growth, is crucial to organizational, is crucial to teamwork, is crucial to well-being and all of those things. Now, there are people circulating these articles because some management guru has said, or because Harvard has published it. They do not, even for a minute, they are not stopping to think that the word ritual is actually derived from the Sanskrit word rita. And the same rita is used in, for example, in Ritu Kala, that is season. There are particular rules to follow in a particular season. The same Rita is used for Vrata. That is, when you do Vratas, you have to follow certain things. And it is the same word that is also coming in rhythm. Rhythm also draws from Rita. So the whole idea is that if you follow certain rules, certain policies, certain principles, you will actually bring your system into rhythm. That you will be able to merge your physical, mental, spiritual, and all of those elements in your this one, and bring it in alignment with Dharma in that sense. But they don't want to agree. Same Harvard sense that they are everybody sharing. Even it was shared to me. They sent it to me saying, this here is an article that so.
But
That is
see, look, it's a very interesting point you made. There is another aspect to this. This whole thing is problematic because there is another side effect of what is happening. One thing is, of course, they are preaching back to us in a sense, right? And our people are lapping it up. Oh, the Harvard has said, and all this. But what is actually they are preaching is a secularized version of what is
correct.
there in Shastra, and that is problematic. Because yes, as you said, the ritual, as the Harvard says, anything you do again and again and again, it creates certain patterns. It creates positivity and all. But the dharmic rituals, the Shastric rituals that we do, it is not just that. There is much more than that.
Absolutely. No,
right?
I just brought it up because
I want to make an important point here.
Yeah.
Because this is important. So now the kind of ritual they're speaking is merely an imitation. Now we have certain scholars who say that the Vedic yagyas, for example, Ashwamedha yagya, is merely an imitation of some astronomical phenomenon. Right? It is true that it imitates astronomical phenomenon at some levels, and the yagyas happen when certain astronomical conjunctions are there. There is no doubt about it. But does it mean that Ashwamedha yagya is merely an imitation of some astronomical happenings, that some stars moving? No. They even go to the extent and say that there is no sacrifice of the horse at all, because it is merely an imitation. But yagya is not merely an imitation. Yagya is much more than that. Yagya has the power to give the fruits for which the yagya is performed. For example, Ashwamedha yagya is performed in certain context. It gives certain kind of fruits to the Raja, which both involves this worldly and the other worldly. So that fruits yagya can give, a mere imitation cannot give. So this secularization of our practices is deeply problematic. One is that we are copy pasting it and kind of promoting it, but in this way we are also losing the essence of the dharmic practice.
Just to add one more aspect to this, I think one other the new age gurus are also to blame, in this angle, because if you look at somebody like, for example, Ramana Maharishi, he would say he did not have to, he had reached such a high, exalted state, therefore for him all of these things dropped by themselves, all of the, but he has never said, do not do this, drop this, and you can get to my state or my state of realization by doing by the methods that I have applied. He has not said that. Of course, he has said that the only way you can understand yourself is by inquiry, which is the same. I mean, that is not different from what we're saying. But today, I think one of the issues that we are facing is the new age gurus are saying that are also, like you say, secularizing this entire process of dharma itself. They don't even want to use the word dharma in many cases.
And I may to add a more controversy to the thing. The modern gurus, many of the acharyas, many of the sannyasis, many people, they completely disregard the Dharmashastras because they present Varnashrama Dharma, a view of Varnashrama Dharma, which is the definition of Varna, which is based on birth. Right? So, and this is the actual definition across all texts. You take Mahabharata, you take any of the texts. So they want to completely ignore that, to completely sideline it. So they take up, for example, only Vedanta. But the problem is, you cannot practice Vedanta unless you attain Chitta Shuddhi. We can read Vedanta fine. I also read Upanishads. You also read Upanishads. that does not mean that I have become an Atmagyani or someone like Shankara or Ramana, right? But so we need Chitta Shuddhi, na? So for Chitta Shuddhi, only Dharma is the way. You cannot attain Chitta Shuddhi without Dharma. And to practice Dharma, you cannot say that Bhagavad Gita is the own Bible of Hindu Dharma. Because Bhagavad Gita, Krishna himself says that you have to practice actions and what actions to practice, what actions not to practice. You have to learn it from Shastras. What
Yes.
are those Shastras? We will take it up in the next question when we speak about the sources of Dharma. What are those
Yeah.
Shastras, right? But one last point I want to add to the question that we were discussing. This is the final definition I wanted to highlight. This is from Ramayana. So I just want to give the glimpse from different texts so that people can appreciate. This is already discussed, but still I will give this definition. In Valmiki Ramayana, this definition comes. Dharma brings artha. Dharma brings artha, and dharma brings sukha. Dharma brings everything. In fact, the essence of the world is dharma. Dharma sara idam jagat. Dharma saram idam jagat. So what is beautifully thing? The essence of the world is dharma. So dharma gives artha, dharma gives sukha, dharma gives everything. It is again comes to the original definition that ihaloka, paraloka, moksha, everything is attainable through dharma. Therefore, dharma is hitam. Dharma is what is truly beneficial. So what this follows from this is, if we are committing adharma today, if we are committing crimes, if we are deviating from the ideals of dharma, it is because somewhere it is because of two things. One, our ignorance about what truly constitutes dharma. True, the vasanas are so strong. The hold of Arishat Varga, the Lobha, Moha, etc., is so strong. The Purva Janma Vasana, the current is so strong that even though we may know what is Dharma, we are not able to do Dharma. Remember Duryodhana's statement in Mahabharata. He says,
Right.
I know what is Dharma, but I am not able to do Dharma. I know what is Adharma and I should not do it, but still I want to keep doing it again. So it is both of knowledge, lack of knowledge about Dharma, as well as the deep attachment, affinity, and tendency to move towards Artha and Kama in isolation without anchoring to Dharma. That is why we have deviated from Dharma, and that is why any discussion on Dharma, when we speak about Shastric definitions of Dharma, it gives us to a lot of different kind of quick reactions among reactive responses from people, from taking deep offense to feeling deep insecurity or feeling frustration or feeling guilty. Sometimes, I have a theory that many people badmouth our Shastras because they feel guilty about their own lives.
Yeah, I think, true. The fact that, for example, if I had to ask myself the question, am I doing or practicing all that is there in this one? I am not. But that does not change the fact that you cannot, Vivekananda says this. The ideal is the ideal. Don't bring down the ideal just to suit your requirements. Something to that effect.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, just because you are not able to measure up to the ideal, you are saying, okay, no, I cannot do it, so I'll bring it down to this level.
So the purpose of ideal is to elevate ourselves to that, right?
And if we cannot, we have to acknowledge, yes, that is the ideal. At the moment, I can't do it, kind of a thing. Yeah.
See, this honesty with our own selves is needed. See, again, we have to understand that the Shastra is, whatever is written in the Shastra, what the rishis have given, it is not polluted with, likeness and hatredness towards anybody. There is neither biasness to favorably towards somebody or unfavorably towards another. It simply is hitam. It is given what is truly beneficial. That is like a medicine. We may not like the taste of the medicine, but it is still needed. In fact, in the Shruti, the Veda itself calls Manu's teachings as medicine to us. Just imagine Manu's teaching is medicine. So this is why we have to be honest with us. If I, as you said, when I see my life, I can see clearly many deviations which I have taken because life is all about negotiation. You remember the conversation in Mahabharata about which Purushartha is highest. So everybody says different thing. One says Artha is highest, one says Kama is highest. Bhima was among the one who says Kama is highest. But Bhima also makes an interesting argument. He says all the three must be pursued in balance. Though Kama is highest, all the three must be pursued, the Dharma, Artha and Kama. And this is an important thing because this is the view of the tradition and our acharyas, that life on a day-to-day basis, for example, you cannot practice religion. I think Vivekananda only said on an empty stomach. I don't remember who said it.
Yeah, he only said.
Yeah.
And he further adds that if you're teaching religion to people who are starving, is like giving stones to instead of bread or something like that, to that effect.
Yeah, exactly. So the reality, our ancestors, our acharyas, they were never aloof from reality. They understood reality and they gave guidelines to negotiate with reality. Neither run away from reality, nor to live in some fantasy world, or not to completely discard idealism to some sort of unrealistic utopia which ignores reality. They wanted us to negotiate with reality, live in reality. So the reality is we have to negotiate with Artha and Kama and on a day-to-day basis. And for truly for our beneficial, we have to bring in the element of Dharma into the life also, to the best possible. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, even a little bit practice of Dharma gives great fruits. It keeps us from away from great fear. So with this perspective, we have to approach the Dharma. That we were discussing just a while back about how the marriage age, just before the session, that the Shastrik, the Dharmashastra prescriptions for marriage age of a woman is quite lower than what is the legal age today. And it speaks about how it puts it in a metaphorically language that how the father and the father especially takes part in the papam of the not marrying the woman once she starts menstruating. But I'll tell you one thing. This verse is in Manusmriti or some other smriti. But Manusmriti also says it is better to not marry your daughter than to marry her to a wrong person. It is better to leave her as a Brahma Kanya as a whole life rather than marry her to a wrong person. What should we make of this? It simply means that once she has attained puberty, which is biological indicator of adulthood, the parents have a duty to help her get married and start with her Grihastha Dharma.
Right.
This is as simple as that. So while it is speaking that the papam becomes associated, that is a fact because Dharmashastra is revealing knowledge which we do not have. It is true, while we studying the Smritis and Dharmashastras, we have to be aware of the language of the Smritis. Often when we read this in translations, and translations need not be faulty, even correct translations also, the language, because we are unfamiliar with it, we find certain things very offensive. Our first reaction is what nonsense. Our first reaction is how outdated this is, how oppressive is this. Because we have been trained to think in a certain way, because we have been trained to uphold certain values of modernity as enlightenment values as good. But the point is, the Shastras has their own language, their own unique way of putting it. Even sometimes I feel, why did they have to put it in this in a roundabout manner rather than simply stating it directly? But it is what it is. We have to work with it. So we have to work with it in which Shraddha. That is where Shraddha comes to play. If we approach it with hermeneutics of respect, the Shraddha with Bhakti, that what is Shastra revealing is for our benefit, then the Shastra will reveal themselves the depth on their own. That is what I have found. There are many portions of Dharmashastra I do not have clarity yet. There are many problematic areas I do not have clarity yet. I'm open about it. As I said, I'm not a guru, Dharma guru. It is my engagement that I'm trying to understand more and more. And as much as more and more I study and more I understand, my Shraddha becomes more reinforced. That many things that earlier appeared problematic to me is no longer appearing so, because I am seeing that the language is put in a certain way which could pose as an obstacle, but the essence is not problematic. We have to actually understand it in proper context. Another example I may just add, just to complete this discussion, that the famous statement, Nastri Swatantram Arhati, the half verse, the Manusmriti says the women do not deserve independence. All feminist writings, Ambedkar writings, all Arya Samaji writings, everybody abuses Manu for this. But actually, what does that say? Verse says, it says, Pita tu rakshati kaumare. I don't remember the whole Sanskrit verse, but basically it says that when the girl is small, the father protects her, and after marriage, the husband protects her, and after in her old age, the son protects her. She should not be left independent. Here, in the context, the independence, swatantram, is not economic independence or liberty or whatnot. She should not be left unprotected. That is the meaning, unprotectedness. Yes, swatantra means unprotectedness, and this is not unique. This is not some kind of word twisting done by commentators. This meaning appears across the text, even in Puranas and other places. In one of the Puranas, I don't remember which Purana, I read a story about daughter of a certain king. She was very beautiful. She was roaming, young daughter, Kanya. She was not married yet. She was roaming in the forest, and suddenly I think it was the Vayudeva, who there was a breeze there, and he was mesmerized by her beauty. And he expressed his desire in the Gandharva way that I desire you. I want to have a good time with you. She said, no, I cannot do it. I am protected by my father. You have to take permission and marry me. He was angry. He had his way and actually cursed her. Because he did not allow, he basically cursed her and went away. That she became ugly and something like that. And then the story goes about how she regained back her beauty and everything. But the point is, she makes the statement that she is protected by her father. So this here, it is actually not a verse about degrading women at all. It is actually verse indicating the duties of the men folk in a society. That you have a duty to protect your mother, your sister, your daughter, your wife, and every other woman in your family and friends, and in fact, every woman in the world. That is why we say that in our culture, we say that except your wife, we have to look upon every other woman as a mother or a sister.
Even this, this is, the point you made is absolutely right. But even this will be seen by the modern feminists as impinging on their freedom. Right? We don't need anybody's protection. We are free, independent individuals who will decide for ourselves.
And they can definitely say this, but funny thing is just what is the implications of that? You'll see. The Ukraine war is happening. Why were the women given importance for evacuation first? If everything is equal, then let women go and stand and fight and not be evacuated first. That is not happening. If then why should women complain that teach your sons not to rape women? Why should they complain? Because they can very well defend themselves, right?
Right.
So let men act as they want. See, I'm not defending that position. I'm saying that there is a logical fallacy in that position.
Right.
If you're teaching your sons protect women, see them as mothers, see them as sisters, protect women, then you are basically teaching the boys, the men folk, not to rape them, not to see them as object of sex. But the feminists, in a way, objectifies themselves in one sense, and then they're complaining about that also. So this feminism is whole bunch problematic at many levels. But return to the basic point, the language of the Shastras, especially of the Dharmashastras, because we are a colonized, post-colonial, so-called post-colonial society, but we are still colonized in our minds. We are a colonial society because of the education, colonial education, and communist and woke education that we have. We have been completely alienated, cut off from our indigenous worldview, the Hindu worldview, the Hindu categories of perception, the Hindu values, the Hindu ideals. And these have been replaced by modernity, modern values, taken from Christianity, taken from Enlightenment values, Reformation, Renaissance, all those from the West. As a result of it, we have become alien to our own culture, our own cultural ethos. We read texts like Sri Dharma Paddhati, which speaks about greatness of Sati Dharma, Pativata Vrata Dharma, and which is called as Sri Dharma. And we assume that marriage, such an idealized version of marriage, is actually problematic because the women are somehow oppressed in it. Her freedom is restricted and all. But take up that story from Mahabharata, wherein a grihini, a married woman who looks after the house, taught Vedanta, the great highest spiritual knowledge to a sadhu. You remember that story of that Dharmavyada and the grihini, I forgot her name, who taught Kushika or Kaushika, who was a ascetic, Brahmana ascetic. He was taught by the grihini. We have examples of Bhamati, we have examples of Bharati, the wife of Mandan Mishra.
Yeah, Ubaya Bharati, yeah.
We have so many examples. We have examples
and in the Chandogya also, I think there is an entire section where the lineage of close to 28-30 of the one is given through the mother, with the mother's name as the main this one. So
yeah, but that is old. Forget that. But even
historically, even much later.
I just watched the movie Pavankin, a wonderful movie. It's a Marathi movie about Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj.
Right.
There, the movie beautifully portrays that Jijabai's influence on Shivaji Maharaj was not limited to inspiration and teaching. She was also deeply involved in the politics of the time. Right. So she was you can say she was a Pativrata Stri. Her independence, economic, political, or whatever it is, was not confined in any way. Similarly, we have Tarabai, that the wife of Rajaram, the son of Shivaji, right? She was a great woman like that. So we have so many examples. Keladi Channamma and all from Karnataka itself, we have examples. Right? So this notion that Stri Dharma or Pativrata Dharma somehow restricts women, these are all modernity notions. So we have become somewhat like alienated from our own ethos, from our own worldview. So when we read the Shastras, and we have been given a particular kind of narrative about our past, that our ancestors were a particular section of a society was oppressive. They distorted everything. They put on, all this Brahmin bashing that goes on, and the whole narrative that our Shastras are oppressive and all those things. We have been trained to think it that way. So when we read the text in translations, it's not just a fault of the translation. Even when you read it in the originals, for example, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar studied Sanskrit, I think to some extent, at least he had some knowledge of Sanskrit. I don't know to what extent, because from some source I read that he studied Sanskrit under some teacher. Some other source I read that he had only confessed that he did not know Sanskrit much. So I don't know what is his, how much knowledge he had. But he studied so many texts. He was a voracious reader. But still, when you read his book, Riddles of Hinduism, that book is so superficial in nature. It claims to point out the riddles in Hinduism, but that riddles book itself is full of riddles.
Yeah.
So to say, right? And
I think it in that sense, in our own, many of our Hindus, praising Ambedkar, it's very, very problematic, because I think, except for a few of his writings on Islam or Islam particularly, the rest of it he has been, very, very harsh on Hindus and other things, and therefore I think raising Ambedkar is actually counterproductive for people who want to protect the Dharma, because his book, which talks of the partition and all of that, is essentially written not as a means to support Hindu Dharma, but rather to point out the problems in Islam. So to use that as a stick to beat them is not the. I mean, I don't see the need for it. And specifically on your earlier point about Brahmin bashing in terms of how they were persecution and all of that, I think the best example I think is to read Dharampal's works on this, where you get to realize that the amount of narrative building that has happened versus reality is so
Very
vast.
different. Yes, yes. The Dharmashastras' work is amazing. I mean, he single-handedly proves that education was available for all,
Correct.
contrary to the propaganda. I think recent work by Sana Singh on educational heritage of India.
I've read that book also.
It adds to this. But my only point is, people often confuse non-eligibility for studying Veda as non-eligibility for any form of knowledge. I think that is the most misunderstood point here. Veda is not needed for everybody, because Veda will not fetch you food. This is as simple as that. Those who are just take up the Vedic Vidwans today, forget about past. All the Vedikas today, many of them who are truly following the Brahmana way of life, who are only teaching Veda and who are not even doing any Karma Kanda, and teaching purely Veda with a handful of students who can give a handful of Dakshina, they were living in utter poverty. Do all the people even want to live such a poor life? Even I don't want to live a poor life, forget about other people, right? So this is a very, very misunderstanding that studying Veda or eligibility or ineligibility of Veda implies eligibility or ineligibility to education. That is utter nonsense. In fact, we have texts which clearly mention about how Nyaya Shastra, Vyakarana Shastra, everybody was allowed to study all these Shastra. And we have so many skills. Now, the education definition of education today is different from what it was in a pre-colonial society. It is so unfair to use today's definition of universal education, that everybody has to study a particular curriculum up to 10th standard, to pre-colonial society wherein education happened within families, within communities. It was a skill-based. Now today, because we are completely lacking in any life skills, we have to go for skill-based training separately. But there the people had skill-based training from the very childhood within their families.
Correct. And specifically, since we brought up Dharampal's beautiful tree, I think he has again shown that 50% of that, besides the 1 lakh schools in the Madras presidency and 1 lakh schools in the Bengal presidency, he also points out that 50% of students in these schools were actually belonging to Shudras.
And even others, not just the Shudras, but even outside of the Varna.
Yeah, and other Varnas, Vaishyas, the Kshatriyas, and Brahmins are roughly close to 15%, 16%, something of that. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I know that so this whole business of discrimination, all that doesn't make much sense. And like you say, I mean, the choice of being a Brahmana and practicing it meant that it was such a difficult life. I think the Kanchi Paramacharya writes in one of his doesn't write, in this Devathan Korali talks about a typical day in the life of a Brahmana. I mean, just reading it, you feel. I mean, I like you said, it's an impossible kind of life. You can't even eat without doing so many things, and you will not get one morsel of food till about late in the afternoon. The kind of life that had to be led.
And you cannot, within such a busy lifestyle, you cannot even find time to actually go and earn your money.
Yeah.
You have to live on donations, right? Yeah. That is why I said it's a life of poverty. I think there is a Bhagavata verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. There is a specific verse which says that a Brahmana's life is meant to be lived in austerity and poverty, and not to for the sake of enjoyment. It is sake of austerity. The suffering is for means it's a means of austerity. It's a tapasya, not for sake of enjoyment. So that was the ideal, and because many Brahmanas lived in that ideal, that whole society respected them. Because of the modernity, so many changes, everything changed, and so many things happened. But that's outside beyond the scope of this discussion. Yeah.
Okay. So I think we have answered we have finished the first question, and then also did a lot of discussion around the question itself. I think we can we're almost 1 hour into the session
Yes.
now. Maybe we could spend some time looking at what are the valid sources of Dharma. I think that was the second part of the question that we wanted to address in this episode. Yeah.
Okay.
Sources of Dharma. Yeah.
Or we can take it up in the next session if you want. You don't mind.
Yeah, whichever. Yeah.
Let us take up this in the next session, because I want to reiterate some points about
Yeah, sure.
the notion of Shabda, Pramana, and all that we already discussed. But so I want to reiterate a bit in more detail. So let's take this up in the next session.
Okay. Okay. Okay then. So thank you. I think this was another wonderful session, and as we see that I think we will continue to have more episodes where the whole idea is that we unpack the Dharmashastras as in as frank and open manner as possible. The idea is not to blindly defend the Shastras, but at the same time, the idea is also that we don't use the stick that the leftists and others use to beat the Shastras ourselves. So thank you once again, Nithin. It's a wonderful session. And
Thank
I
you,
think
Ramesh.
we will come back to that second part of the question in episode 3, perhaps. Yeah. Thank you. And
yeah. Thank you. Namaste.